Well, let's talk more about what the commissioners are calling for. Dennis Daley is Assistant RCMP Commissioner and Commanding Officer in Nova Scotia, and he's in Halifax. Assistant Commissioner Daley, thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to talk to your viewers.
You've now had the Commission's final report for 2 days, and of course, more than half of their recommendations involve the RCMP. What's your top priority in Nova Scotia as you go through the report?
As you know, the RCMP has significantly supported the independent Mass Casualty Commission. Yesterday was a very somber day. It was my first opportunity to spend time at the venue in Truro. I met with family members, also listened to the 3 commissioners deliver the public report. For the RCMP, we did not wait for the release of the report to action some change. Here in Nova Scotia specifically, we've added significant resources to our emergency response team. We have robust emergency alerting, public alerting protocols. In Nova Scotia since April of 2020, we have triggered 18 emergency alerts for critical incidences. In addition, we have updated mapping pictometry, which was an issue during the response. We have also rolled out new equipment such as what we refer to as Blue Force tracking, so we can now track our officers outside the police car more readily. It assists in command and control because our commanders now know where each responder is. So when our first responders responded and walked into the nightmare that was Portapique with the fires and multiple things going on at the same time, it was difficult for our commanders to know where our immediate action response teams were. So we've rolled out that sort of equipment as well. As far as top priorities, again, I've started reading the report. I'm going to have to give the report the due diligence, as the commissioner said, to read it appropriately and digest it. I do know the relationship. For me, one of the top priorities is the relationship with our policing partners, and not only our policing partners, but also our partners from community services and other services that we need to be successful. So I've already started that rebuilding and strengthening of the relationships with the Nova Scotia chiefs of police. I'm kind of lucky because this is my 3rd time in Nova Scotia, so I had some pre-existing relationships that I'm able to build on. So I've met collectively with the chiefs of police, I've met individually with the chiefs of police, and I'm quite confident that the relationship will strengthen. I think Nova Scotians realize that we are integrated, we train together, and we do operate together. Though I do recognize that the need to strengthen the relationships at the more senior command.
Right, and I do want to ask, because you talked about some of the policies that you put in place recently, and I guess what Nova Scotians and Canadians want to know is are you confident that at this moment that those new policies would make the response substantially different than what happened 3 years ago?
I'm certainly confident that the response would be significantly different. Even the single edition of emergency alerting now that the RCMP uses and other service providers, other police forces across the country use now is a significant step forward in being able to communicate effectively to the public during a critical incident. So we would have seen last summer at James Smith First Nation in Saskatchewan, where multiple alerts were put out over a period of time. And so, that I am confident just that in and of itself will be of assistance, let alone the other changes. However, I do want to also commit that there is more to do, and we are willing, not only in Nova Scotia, but as an RCMP organization, we are willing to commit to act on all the recommendations.
Right, and the Commission says that the RCMP needs to, in their words, adopt a policy of admitting its mistakes and being more accountable. So when it comes to the mass casualty in the report that's being put out, who is being held accountable for the mistakes that were made?
I certainly myself, recognize that our first responders and the support staff who responded to Portapique did the best they could, given their training and their equipment available at that particular time. However, I do acknowledge as well that there were shortcomings in the response. It is my responsibility as the leader here in Nova Scotia and other police leaders to review the report and act on those recommendations that specifically speak to police around the critical response.
I do want to ask you as well about officer training. The commissioners are calling for a new 3-year model, which would replace the RCMP's long-standing training depot in Regina, where there's a 6-month program. What do you think of that idea?
I do think, as the commissioners talked about yesterday, is taking the time to review exactly that recommendation and other recommendations. I think it's too early to comment on the implications of such a decision. I am aware that it was discussed throughout the inquiry, and the suggestion of other countries who may have a system that might be more effective. So I do think it's too early to really comment on how we may move forward on that recommendation.
Well, then let me ask you about the urban-rural divide, because the Mass Casualty Commission did speak of that throughout its report in some of these issues. They want more community orientation, more supervision for officers in rural and remote detachments. How are you going to address that?
Yes, that's a challenge for us. As you know, we do primarily rural policing across the country. What I heard from the commissioners as well that I tuned into yesterday was the urban bias versus the rural bias, for instance. And, it's throughout my service, and I've done significant amount of rural policing, the access to services that assist the police in accomplishing goals can be reduced in the rural areas. And so that's always been a significant issue. For instance, I can recall, the courts asking for probation and along with anger management, for instance. And the challenge was that the course on anger management wasn't offered, or there wasn't enough participants in order to offer the course in the rural area that I was working in. So that is external to policing, but the idea of community well-being, community safety, and which the commissioners touched on significantly, is an important issue. I'm certainly supportive of anything that provides more public safety, recognizing that the commissioners also said that the police seem to be the default for a lot of different things where we do not hold the expertise. And I think every police leader would agree that we seem to be the default. So I do think we need further conversations. Police need to be part of those conversations as we reimagine what policing may look like.
All right, well, certainly, we could go much deeper into this report, but we do have to leave it there for now. Assistant Commissioner Dennis Daley, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.